What is the worst way you've seen someone mismanage their money? Well, the accountant at the small business I work at does a lot of funny things with money. Has a perfectly good, paid-off car, but it was slightly too old to drive for Uber to make extra money, so she got a lease on a brand new car through Uber. After a month she found out she wasn't making enough extra money from Uber to even pay the lease, and her commute was too far to drive the Uber car to work and back, because they limit the miles. After she weaseled out of her Uber lease, she decided she needed a brand new Harley that she had no idea how to drive. This was over a year ago. She has ridden it exactly once around her neighborhood. She will be paying for this motorcycle for another 4 years at least. She took out a second mortgage on her home to fix it up to get ready to sell. She is so happy with the remodel that she is keeping the house. She is a single mother twice over, and is always telling us how some nice man from her church paid for her daughter's school trip or whatever. She is the dumbest person I have ever met, and I am always a little freaked out that she is handling our money. Guy I know won $10,000. Then spent that $10,000 trying to win again. House always wins. One of my coworkers bought a new car, because, wait for it, she couldn't afford to put tires on her current one. This one just hurts. It hurts my brain. People only see the payments, not the cost. Divorce. Growing up, we were good friends with a family that had made it big with buying/selling airplane parts pre-internet age. The couple went through a nasty divorce that got strung out over a 6-year period. The wife was 100% convinced through her shitbag lawyers that her husband had funneled money into secret accounts. He didn't, and wasn't happy with his initial offer, the mansion, half the multi-millions, and $5,000 a month for child support alone. The court proceedings went on for years, and at the end of it all, they both pretty much had nothing due to court fees and lawyer fees. His business failed because of how unstable air travel became after 9/11. If she had just split things and taken that with the mansion and the other payments, she would have gotten $4.2 million from the divorce, not having worked a day in her life. TLDR, divorce is a hell of a drug. I have an idiot friend who's getting something like 30% of his wages garnished. Why? Because he forgot to pay his student loan. He's shit at paying bills, and it's not because he doesn't make the money for it. He has a decent job. He just literally ignores paper mail and emails reminding him and then eventually demanding him to pay off things like credit card bills and his student loans. If he does bother to read them, it literally goes in one ear and out the other, just slides right out of his mind. After a few months he'll remember, log into his account, pay the payment in full with accrued interest and shrug it off like it's normal. Somehow he forgot to pay his student loans for something like a year and it went to collections. I told him he could even just set up automatic payments for that shit, and he agrees it's a good idea. And then just never does it. I offered to set it up for him and it's always later. Friend got $150K in life insurance from her mom passing. It was gone in a year. She paid a $20K bail for her boyfriend. At the end of the year, he was also gone. She works at Popeyes now. The idea of bail is that you get it back though. Not if her boyfriend violates the terms of the bail bondsman. My brother-in-law bought a used BMW for $15,000 with a credit card at 26% April. This is the winner. A friend at 37 who had never worked any job that pay above minimum wages inherited tons of money from his father. Despite having absolutely no experience in any of those positions or even how to run/manage a business. Suddenly open up a restaurant which was a disaster from day one and closed down not long afterward. Decided to get into photography business. Throw away tons of money on all super fancy equipment he have absolutely no idea what is for or how to use. Never made a penny. Tried to start a DJ business. No bite. Disappeared off face of the earth right afterward. My friend, whom I love dearly, recently has been driving me pretty insane. Her parents are terrible with their money, and she has been complaining for ages about how inconsiderate and irresponsible they are. How they infuriate her because they buy things they don't actually need with the reasoning of, well, it'll make us/someone else happy, so what's the problem? She calls me a month or so ago because thanks to her parents and their irrational spending habits and irresponsibility, she may not be able to finish school, she doesn't know how she'll manage to eat or afford anything she needs, and she can't get a full-time job right now either. So she and her boyfriend, who she's breaking up with soon, decide that, instead of saving their very limited money and using it wisely, they would impulsively buy 2 puppies. I don't know the breed, but they'll be huge dogs when they grow up, from a sketchy stranger on Facebook who they don't know and who charged them hundreds of dollars for the pups. Her reasoning for getting them, when she knows she can't afford them. They all make me happy, so it'll help with the stress of not having any money. I'm still enraged, honestly. The hypocrisy, irresponsibility, and impulsivity is maddening. My friend is basically a 37-year-old child with a good salary. One month his water bill was $700. He asked me if I thought it was because his sink faucet was dripping. I said it sounded more like a broken pipe. He never found out the issue. He just paid the bill and said, "Oh well." A guy I worked with was always complaining that he was poor, although I later found out that this was solely due to bad budgeting and impulse spending. He was really good at his job, so I suggested that he do some freelance IT security consulting on the side. He did a job for a high-end jeweler which paid him around $2,000 for 2 days' work. He was ecstatic that he finally had enough money to fix all the problems he'd been putting off for ages, like the oil leak on his car, a new pair of work shoes, and get his boiler fixed. At the end of the job, he was leaving the retailers with cash in hand when he spotted a high-end watch in a display case which was $2,000 down from $3,500 or so. Unable to pass up such a bargain, he handed the $2,000 back and walked out with the watch instead. 2 days later he was complaining because his fridge was empty. My response was, at least you can use the watch to time how long it takes you to starve. Grew up fairly wealthy, went to a private school with lots of other wealthy kids. Knew one girl who had 2 wealthy parents pass away when she was young. She lived with an uncle. She was messed up as a kid, really wild, always the first to try everything. In her own way incredibly sweet, always protected the less popular kids. Anyways, she hits 21, gets a huge trust fund. Her uncle puts up a fight for the money because he knows she's going to go nuts with it. It wasn't for the cash, he had much more than her. Ultimately he loses and she gets everything. It's the beginning of the end for her. She blows through massive wealth in 2 years, doing untold amounts of cocaine, binge drinking, trips to crazy places, constantly surrounded by people using her for party money. We're talking millions of dollars here. Not a cent invested anywhere. Anyways, 2 years later she's back with the uncle, not a penny to her name. He loves her, so of course takes her in. Everyone that hung on to her for the past 2 years is gone. Everyone laughs at her behind her back. A few overdoses and drug use left her a little slow. She tries school but it doesn't work. Her uncle gave her a job but it's a token thing. At least she's lucky enough that she had someone to look after her in the end. My sil had a kiosk at the mall that didn't make that much money. She doesn't have another job except Uber sometimes. She has 2 kids and always takes them to eat out and buys stuff that costs beyond her means. She lives with my mill and pays next to nothing for rent, so there's really no excuse. She refuses to even slightly thrift on her kids' clothes and constantly buys them stuff like Lacoste and Ralph Lauren because image is apparently everything. Her oldest just started kindergarten this year. He plays soccer, too, so she splurged on all the high-end equipment, and he's not really even that into the sport. Anyway, his teacher said that in her 25 years of teaching, this was the first time she was ever instructed by a parent to make sure their kid changed his shoes before pee. I just got the news this morning that she lost the kiosk yesterday. Too many fines for showing up late to open and bringing her youngest to work with her, so they shut her down. Every once in a while my stepdad will calculate how much money he could save by quitting drinking, then decides to quit and starts spending like he has that money. He doesn't actually quit. If I pay it off now, I can trade it in for something bigger. Happens so often, it's absolutely the worst idea. You currently have a vehicle you don't owe on, that if you just paid it off likely has 3670k miles, and should last you another 100k miles easy. Bubba, that one hooks up to my phone though. I gave my brother a step-by-step plan to cover his rent, keep his job, fill up his car, and pay me back within a 1-week period. He was tight on money. I found him at Foot Locker with a large bag 2 hours later. That must have hurt. Yeah, 2 pairs of Nikes forcibly shoved up someone's butt would hurt quite a bit. I used to work in a bank offering investment and lending advice. Car loans, mortgages, retirement savings, that sort of thing. I had a client who was a successful lawyer, and his father was a very successful lawyer. He married a successful lawyer. They made a lot of money, easily over $1 million each, so $2 million per year, gross household income. Every week they had zero money left. I tried to help by setting up an automatic contribution to a savings account. If they don't see it, maybe they won't spend it. No, they spent it. Every week they would call me to transfer the money out of savings and into their checking account. So I sat down with them and went over their budget. They didn't have one. They had no concept of what things cost. They didn't have a firm grasp of how much they made, or how much they spent. They bought impulsively and recklessly. The Dodge Viper was a big thing at the time, so he went out and bought one and financed it. He didn't have space for it, so he rented space to store it. He never drove it. He had it customized with expensive aftermarket stuff. It was a work of art. I don't know if he ever drove it at all. He had no interest in showing it or anything. It was a money pit. She had never cut her own finger or toenails. Her whole life she had just gone for a weekly mani-pedi. More frequently if she chipped a nail or something. She shopped, a lot. She always looked amazing. They were very smart people, but had grown up with money and had no concept of it, like it would always just be there. I tried to help them budget, but that means deciding to go without something or delaying a purchase, and they had never done it before, so why start now? I left the bank and they were still going week to week. Wonderful people, but just no concept of money. Me, when I was 18 years old and applied for credit. 10 years later I finally finished paying off those damn cards. On the upside, you learned a valuable lesson, and assuming you don't have late payments on your records, you've now got 10 years of positive credit history. I made the same mistake when I was young, and lucked out by never missing a payment. The gift to future me was a stupid high credit score, right at a time in my life I want to go Dave Ramsey style debt-free and never borrow a cent again. I knew a guy that bought a Trans Am, fully loaded, and had a $700 payment in 1985, that's like $1,650 today. He ended up bankrupt. Another guy I know told me he was going to declare bankruptcy over a $4,000 debt about 20 years ago. We were riding in his late model truck. I said, "Why don't you sell the truck, settle the debt and save up for a new truck?" He got furious and yelled at me for saying that. He ended up bankrupt, and still lost the truck. My coworker. She never has the money to pay important bills, but goes on $300 shopping sprees on the weekend. Treat yourself. Clothes? Yep. Fragrances? Yup. Massages, mimosas, and fine leather goods? Yes, yes, and yes. I saw a guy at a gas station drop $2,000 on lottery tickets. My uncle managed a tobacco store for years. He had some regular who came in to spend hundreds and even a couple thousands every day on scratchers and lottery. Like, they hung out for hours every day to scratch a few dozens, trade, get a couple new ones, trade, etc. Of course none of them ever broke even or won the jackpot except once or twice, and only because they did that every day for years. These people are an unspoken kind of addicts. I have a friend who is 40 years old, single, lives by himself and will buy weed as a priority over some of his bills. Every 2 to 3 months I'll get a call asking for a bailout. He is also on Social Security and lives in a subsidized apartment, pays $120 for rent. Very frustrating to get those calls for help. $120? Like $120? This one made me the saddest. Yup, sad. I went to community college my first year. I knew this guy that was from a super low income family and he received massive amounts of student loans. He blew it all on a used car, wheels and a sound system. I tried to tell him it was a loan and not a grant. He disagreed. Lost touch with him a year or two later, but he has to be underwater in debt. It's one thing to pick up a used car for transportation using student loans, but a sound system in it? Geez. College friend graduated with over $100,000 in private student loans. The bank offered a $5,000 credit towards the loans as a graduation gift, or $1,500 in cash. They took the $1,500 and used it as a down payment on a new car. Edit. For clarification, this was a new car to replace a perfectly good used car. And they did not get into a lucrative career. Last I heard they were working food service. I have a colleague in her mid-50s who is divorced with no kids. She is the sole means of her own financial support, i.e., no parents or siblings to fall back on. She lives alone in an apartment. She recently took out her second debt consolidation loan. As soon as she gets those credit cards maxed out, she takes out a loan, pays the cards off and runs them up again. I'd feel sorry for her if the charges were for general living expenses, but they're not. They're for highlights in her hair, manicures, trips to the Caribbean with boyfriend du jour, Those cute sandals that she'll wear twice before replacing them with cuter sandals. High-end everything, makeup, perfumes, clothing. Once in a while, she will lament about her $40,000 loans and the fact that she is literally 2 paychecks from being homeless, and I will gently point out that less trips to the salons and the islands might put her in a better financial position. I work hard and I deserve nice things. I deserve vacations. I deserve to feel good and look good. Don't tell me how to spend my money. This, coming from a woman who has to pay for her lunch with a credit card the day before payday because she's overdrawn on her checking account. I've seen her do this, and she explained why she was doing it. She refuses to believe that she's the cause of her own financial difficulties. I know someone that will refuse to work a regular job, lives off the women in his life, doesn't have 2 nickels to rub together at 52 years old, and complains constantly about how everything is rigged to keep him from succeeding. Edit. Damn, I thought there can't be that many of this asshole. Apparently this guy is everywhere, ha ha ha. I see you know a slightly older version of my brother-in-law. One of my old friends was living paycheck to paycheck, less than that some months. She was eating food from work for breakfast, which was one of those ice cream places. When I was asking her about her finances to see where she could cut back, she mentioned that she smoked recreational weed every day, several times a day, but she said, "It's only a hobby that I could stop at any time." However, she refused to stop when I told her it was a possible avenue to cut back on if she wanted to comfortably make her bills. It kind of got tiresome to hear about how she had no money for food constantly. Thanks for listening to another episode of Reddit X. Subscribe and activate the notification bell so you won't miss any stories. Feel free to share your own stories below in the comments. Have a good day.